Hey guys, welcome back to Ride Review. My name is Mitch. I am an e-bike shop owner, powering e-bikes here in Houston, Texas, and I review electric vehicles like the Roadster V3, which is what we're going to be talking about in today's review. Now, before we get into this perfect ride series review on the Roadster V3, I do want to mention that Ride1Up did send us this bike for free. They are not paying us for this video, so all of our thoughts and opinions are going to be our own here. And really, as far as thoughts and opinions go, in the perfect ride series, the implication is like there's a perfect e-bike out there and maybe we're searching for it. In reality, what it means is there's not a perfect e-bike out there, objectively. However, there might be a perfect e-bike for you. So is the Roadster V3 the perfect bike for you? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Now, the first and most important thing when making a purchasing decision is going to be price point. So right now, the Roadster V3 is priced at $12.95 for whichever version of this you get. Right now, we are looking at the medium frame size. They've also got a low step version and a large frame. All those are the same price. So really, it just comes to, making sure that that frame size matches you. But right now, $12.95 is the price you get. Now, we've got the belt drive version, which is a single speed version. They also have one that comes with a 10-speed Shimano Dior. So if you are looking to do a little bit more hills and terrains and things like that, you probably want to go with the 10-speed, but we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the terrain section. The next thing to look at is how you would actually use this bike. Right now, this is touted as a commuter bike. For me, a commuter has a couple things. It's got fenders on it, and it's got a rack. So as you see right now for the $12.95, it doesn't come with a rack, but you can get those for $55 extra. So if you really are looking to turn this into a commuter, you want to put pannier bags, a trunk bag on there, something like that, the rack would be excellent here, and they did build that out for us. Now, this also comes in a gravel configuration, and as far as I can tell, the gravel configuration just doesn't have the lights or the fenders. That's it. Everything else is exactly the same, and it's the exact same price. So if it were me, I'd go commuter. You got the fenders, you got the lights, and then if you want to turn it into a gravel bike, I guess you take the lights off and you take the fenders off and you're good to go. It's super lightweight at only 39 pounds and really has enough get up and go to do what we need to do. We got a 500 watt Ebike motor in the back. This has about 50 Newton meters of torque or so, and for flat ground, it's really all you need, especially with the single speed version. It does feel a little bit more like a traditional bike. And most of that is due to the torque sensor we have in here. So this torque sensor they have in here is the Intuit Drive torque sensor. It was actually designed with or by some of the people from Bosch. And Bosch is obviously, it's a big name brand. You see a lot of the really expensive bikes with that Bosch motor system. So the torque sensor is super smooth. We'll talk about it a little bit more. However, not a whole lot of torque like on some of the other e-bikes that are pushing 90, or some of the mid drives that are pushing 110, 120. But again, it's enough to feel like it is an e-bike, but it's quite enough that most people probably wouldn't know you're on an e-bike unless, they saw the motor or they knew what they were looking for. So for me, I really do see a lot of people using this for either an entry-level gravel bike or a single-speed commuter. I think both of those make a lot of sense here. Now, as far as top speed goes, this does ship as a Class 2 bike, meaning that the throttle and the pedal assist will take you up to 20 miles per hour, but it is pretty easy to pop in there and change this into a Class 3 bike, meaning that the pedal assist will take you to 28 miles per hour, while the throttle is still going to cut you off at about 20. Now, with the belt drive, and again, we'll talk about this more when we get to the ride test portion, the belt drive, it being a single speed, right around 23, 24 miles per hour is kind of where it reaches its maximum, in my opinion. I wouldn't say we get into any like ghost pedaling or anything like that, but you can tell you're not able to put in as much force into the pedals, and the cadence is a little high once you get up to 28, but you still can go to 28 with the single speed. If you're somebody that wants that Class 3 20 miles per hour, my recommendation would probably be going with the 10 speed. But if you are looking for a Class 2 commuter and the 20 miles per hour speed is fine with you, then I think the belt, the way they have this tuned, it's tuned really well for those speeds. Now, as we mentioned earlier, this is a light bike. It's only 39 pounds, so really it's nothing to lift. Even if you had to take this up and down some stairs, I think that's pretty acceptable. And it can support up to 300 pounds of total rider weight. So most people that are gonna wanna be on this style of bike, 300 or less is probably that person, in my opinion, who would want something like this. So I think the weight to weight capacity ratio here is pretty awesome. The next thing to talk about is going to be range. How far will it go? So right now it is rocking a 36 volt, 9.8 amp hour, 352.8 watt hour battery. The battery here does use Samsung cells. It is lockable and removable. Pretty easy to pop it out of the down tube here. And it is UL 2271 certified, which is UL certifications for e-bike batteries. So just so you know, they sent this battery off. They looked at it, they said, hey, this is a safe bike battery. If you live in places like New York and some other spots, you're gonna need a UL certified battery. There are some things to be said about the UL certification on the bike, but we'll talk about that later in the safety section. Online, Ride1Up claims this is a 20 to 40 mile bike as far as the range goes. And honestly, it's not too bad as far as a realistic range, in my opinion. Now, with the single speed and using the throttle sometimes, your average rider, 180 to 200, something like that, you're probably gonna get closer to that 25 to 30 mark. However, if you did have the 10-speed version, you're using a low level of pedal assist, I do see most people kind of reasonably able to hit 35 and maybe hit 40 miles if we've got, you know, flat terrain and maybe it's a smaller rider. We talked about the motor, we talked about the battery, some of the range here. Now the next thing to look at is terrain. What types of terrain could you take this on? Now we do have these 700 by 45C tires here. Now these are a gravel tire, so a little bit smoother in the middle for our on-road concrete stuff, and we do have a little bit of grip here on the edges for when we're in a little bit more of that off-road gravelly type environment. A lot of gravel bikes don't have suspension of any kind because they're looking to cut down on weight. So I think they really kept it true to the gravel idea. This isn't a bike I would recommend doing a whole lot of, you know, serious off-roading, but for the niche that they built it, sort of that road and gravel niche use case, I think it makes a lot of sense as far as the terrain goes. The next thing to chat about would be transport and weight. Now we have mentioned the bike's weight a couple times, coming in at 39 pounds. And what is really cool about that is you don't need an e-bike rated bike rack. This opens itself up to being something that could go on a roof rack even. We've got a through axle, so it would be easy to pop the tire off, put it into smaller places. And again, it's lighter and it's a little bit easier to maneuver in that sense. The next thing to chat about is going to be ride feel, and we could just sit here and talk about it, but I'm gonna send it out to myself for the ride test. All right, guys, we are outside for the ride test portion on the Roadster V3. So let's go ahead and do some riding. So go ahead and, I was gonna say turn on, it's already turned on. But before we get into eco mode, let's go ahead and pedal this thing around. Again, we got this single speed belt drive here. Let's see how she is pedaling around. Not too hard to get going. Now, one of the nice things, it is still gonna show us our speed here, which is nice. Really, it's not too bad. Again, it's a lighter bike, 39 pounds, so pretty easy to move it around. I'm going about 13 miles an hour. This feels like a nice, easy pace for me, but this is an e-bike review, so let's go ahead and turn the bike on. Now we've got into eco mode. Let's go ahead and start off with the throttle and see how that works. Now, one thing I do like about the Roadster V3, as far as the throttle goes, is no matter what level of pedal assist we're in, we're still gonna get up to 20 miles per hour. It goes to about 20.5, but you know, again, that was pretty easy to get for those speeds. Now that we're in eco, go ahead and do some pedaling. There's no gears to shift through because we got the single speed belt drive here. But let's see how she is to pedal. Again, we've got a torque sensor in here that is pretty smooth, so I'm just hanging out. I don't know what to do with my hands. So nice and easy. Again, very smooth. We're going about 16 miles an hour right now, and this feels super nice, super easy. I'm still getting plenty of assistance. Which turns into a really easy riding bike in eco mode. And again, talking about the range, 20-40 miles is the claimed range. I would probably ride it mostly around, like if I was gonna commute with it, 16, 17 miles an hour, nice, easily pedaling pace. Nothing too crazy here. I think you really could get quite a bit of range on it, which is nice. Go ahead and put it into tour. Feel a little bit more of that torque coming out of the motor. Obviously, you know, it's a torque sensor, and the torque sensor here is super smooth. and pretty stable for a lighter bike. I mean, I think I just want to do most of this review no-handed. So I got lots of good control over it. I can still turn it, no hands. I think it's super smooth, super easy riding bike. Let's go ahead and put it into sport. Oh, there you go, there's the torque. Once it gets into sport, feels like a bit of a different bike there. And boost. Now it's a nice, easy come on as far as the power goes. So the torque curve here is still geared to be real smooth on the low end. But once it hits 20, then it really kicks in. And again, we've got a class 3 mode, so we're gonna go faster than 20. Right now we're doing 24, 25. Get up to 26 there. Again, just a very, very smooth bike, even with no suspension. You do have the larger wheels, so our attack angle on a lot of this small stuff is pretty in there, pretty easy. Really, like I said, if it were me, probably just coast around in eco mode. Go to about 16, 17 miles per hour, easy breezy. I feel like I'm putting the right amount of effort in here with the single speed. And it's just smooth, it's simple. Smooth and simple. If I can only sum up the bike in 2 words, smooth and simple, I think it would be how I'd go about it with a single speed belt drive. So, guys, if you're looking for something that is simple, easy to use, smooth, that's another one of my keywords there. This feels like it kind of is the ticket, especially the price point, $12.95. The smoothness and ride feel here, it really is hard to beat right now. We've reviewed a lot of bikes here recently, and as far as the torque sensor goes, this might be the second most smoothest torque sensor I've ridden on. So, and you're asking, like, what's the first? What's the first smoothest torque sensor? The smoothest torque sensor is from a company called Ebike. They've got 3 models: the Big Sur Sport, Santa Monica. Something about the all-Bafang system that they have going on over there, it just is super smooth as far as the torque sensor goes. But this is definitely coming into second place, in my opinion. And guys, I think that is going to do it for the ride feel portion. If you guys got any questions about the ride feel portion, how it feels to ride, there's some of the maneuverability here, which honestly is pretty nice, let me know down in the comments. Let's get back to the review. The next thing we're gonna talk about is safety. And the first thing when it comes to safety is braking, in my opinion. So here we've got our Tektro hydraulic brakes, and those are connected to our hydraulic calipers down here with 160mm rotors. Now, something that's interesting about these brakes is there is no motor cutoff cable, which we see on most other e-bikes. And some of the other like heavier e-bikes, that might be a con, but for this one, it is super light, 39 pounds. Most people are probably gonna keep this in class 2 mode going 20 miles per hour, and they do the job really, really well. We've also got a torque sensor, so it's a little bit faster to come off, a little bit faster to come on. So I'm not really worried about fighting the motor, and and some of these other bikes might be with like a cadence bike or something like that. So I think this setup here makes a lot of sense. Does make it a little bit more streamlined. The cable management here I think is really, really slick. So when you're looking at it, pretty much everything they did was sort of this minimalist design. As far as safety stuff goes, we do have integrated lights. So we've got integrated light here in the front and the rear, and we don't have brake integration. Again, we don't have that motor cutoff switch to let the computer know that we're braking, but the light turns on in the front, the light turns on in the back, so a little bit more of a safety thing. The light in the back's a little bit low. It's not super large, so it's not a super large surface area, but it's fairly bright. People could probably see it when we turn the lights on. And again, with the gravel version, doesn't come with those. So if it were me, I'd get the commuters the exact same price. And then if you want to, take off the fenders, then you lose that rear light, but you also have the front light in here, which I think makes a lot of sense. So we have integrated lights front and rear. One of the things that we're missing here from a safety perspective is going to be sidewall reflective stripes. Not really a big thing you see on a lot of gravel bikes, but if you are riding this around the city and you are doing some nighttime riding, having those sidewall reflective stripes on the tires would be pretty cool. Definitely something you could upgrade. There's probably lots of options, but the tires they do come with, these G1s from Schwalbe, they are pretty nice, so I don't know if I would necessarily switch those out, but if you are looking for other safety things without adding a bunch of lights or extra things to it, getting a tire that did have sidewall reflective stripes would be a nice thing for nighttime riding. Now, the last safety thing we'll talk about is the UL certification. We already mentioned the battery is UL 2271 certified, and that's awesome. There's a lot of places that require that these days, and I think as the industry kind of evolves, we're gonna see that being a requirement a little bit more. Now, the whole bike is, as far as I know, not UL certified yet. It might be something they're working on to get the whole product UL 2849 certified, but as it stands right now, it is not UL certified. Now, that doesn't mean it's an unsafe bike. Again, as far as like the battery is kind of the biggest thing that most people are looking for. So not really a con, but just something to be aware of. However, I do imagine they're probably in the process of doing that, and that will come out in the next little bit here. The next thing to talk about is gonna be the measurements of this bike. So the total length here is 71 inches, and that's from the front tire to the rear fender over there. And the width is 26 3/4 inches at the handlebars. Now the step over here is pretty large. It's 32.5 inches. So even for me at 5'11", it is a little bit to get over and get on. You know, obviously you're just swinging your leg over and that's not too bad, but it's a little bit higher. So if you do want sort of the low step version, that might be a good way to go if you were looking for a little bit of a step over height there. The next geometry things to talk about are all about you, and the main way we're gonna do that is the minimum and maximum seat heights here. The minimum seat height is 32.5 inches from the top of the saddle to the pedal at its lowest point, and 36.5 inches from the top of the saddle to the ground. The maximum saddle height is 41 inches from the top of the seat to the pedal at the lowest point, and 45 inches from the top of the seat to the ground. Now, there are a lot of great videos on YouTube about how to measure yourself for a bike, so those numbers will make sense to you and you can translate that to yourself and figure out how that would fit for you. The next thing to chat about is gonna be extras. So as far as traditional extras go, doesn't come with a rack. Again, that's $55 if you wanna add that on there to make it a true commuter. Then that kind of opens up the platform for trunk bags, pannier bags, other things that you can throw on the back. But it does come with fenders in the commuter configuration. So fenders would be an extra. Now these are a metal fender, not super flimsy. I mean, they are a little bit smaller, but I feel like the way that they attached everything, it's pretty robust. It feels pretty nice. And we've got the integrated lights that we talked about already. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of extras. Again, this is a minimalist bike setup, and really is one of those bikes that, maybe a stealth e-bike, some people might call it, in as much that it doesn't necessarily scream that it's an electric bike, so there's not a whole lot of extras that we would normally see on an electric bike here. In the next section, we are going to answer 3 questions from the internet. And the first question is, I'm still torn what drivetrain I'm going to pick. Please help. Any inputs would be appreciated. Which do you think is better and why? Now, I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I think each one of them has its pros and cons. For the belt drive, which is the version we have here, less maintenance to do on a belt than a traditional chain, but we are limited to a single speed in this configuration. So if you are on flat grounds, you are going 20 miles per hour or lower, I think the belt drive makes a ton of sense. If you're in a spot that you've got hills or you want to go 28 miles per hour, I think upgrading to the 10 speed makes a lot of sense here. Again, we're still going to have a pretty minimalist setup here in the front, and that's going to allow you to gear for the right terrain, whether you're going up hills, down hills, flat grounds, those higher speeds, things like that. But the cons to a chain, and it's not really like a huge con, it's fairly simple, but you got to keep them lubricated, you got to keep them cleaned, and those are just things that come with regular bicycle maintenance. Question number 2. The parts on paper are much better than the Velotric T1, and this one comes with added features. Do you know why it's $200 less expensive? Well, the answer to that is not necessarily about the product, it's more about the business setup of each of the brands, Ride1Up and Velotric. So with Velotric, they have a hybrid direct-to-consumer and dealer model, and in order to do that, they have to have extra margin in there for the dealers, otherwise dealers wouldn't sell their bikes, right? If I was gonna sell a bike and I made no money on it, I wouldn't be in business, therefore there has to be some margin baked in for the dealers. Velotric's also a larger company, there's more staff, so all of the overhead means that they have to sell their bikes for a little bit more in order to make the right kind of money so they can stay in business. Ride1Up is a direct-to-consumer only company, meaning they don't have to pay for stores and have to bake in dealer margin, and so they're able to bring those savings to the end consumer. So the end consumer is going to get a product that is, you know, better on paper, like we're talking about, and they're going to pay less for it. So those are some of the pros and cons. Now the cons to a direct-to-consumer company: you can't take it to a local bike shop where you bought it from because you didn't buy it from a local bike shop. So you got to work directly with the company. In Ride1Up's case, you know, it's hit or miss, mixed, if you will, online, as far as some people get great customer service, some people complained about it. On the internet, you never really know, you know, what's true, who's a bot, who's real, all that stuff. So, you know, that being what it is, when you buy from a direct-to-consumer company, you have to work with the company versus buying from Velotrek. Like, I'm a Velotrek dealer. If you bought a Velotrek from me, you had an issue, you bring it to me, we work on it, we do all the warranty stuff. Whereas if you buy a Ride1Up and you bring it to me, well, you know, it's a little bit of a different story. And the third question is, how do you change the bike from Class 2 to Class 3? That is an excellent question. I'm going to walk you through it right now. All right, so in order to switch it from Class 2 to Class 3, we're going to press this power button, like so. And we're going to press and hold this menu button. And this is going to get us into our settings here. So we've got our units, our backlight, ride mode, battery type, auto sleep password, display info, and controller info, and advanced settings. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to ride mode and press the menu button again. And right now we can change it between Class 1, 2, and 3. So right now it's in Class 3, so we're putting Class 2. Now it's in Class 2 mode. We'd come up here, you know, exit again, but really it comes in Class 2 mode. So we're going to come here, change it to Class 3, exit, and boom, now it is in Class 3 mode. If you're watching this whole review and the Roadster V3 is checking off a lot of the boxes for you, the next question is, how can you get your hands on one? Well, as I mentioned when we were answering the questions from the internet, Ride1Up is a direct-to-consumer company, meaning you can only buy it through their website. There might be some third-party resellers, and maybe there's a shop out there who just sells it with a markup. I'm not 100% sure, but the main way most people are going to get their bike is by going to ride1up.com and getting their bikes through them. They've got a pretty simple ordering process. You order it, ships to your house, you assemble it, or you can take it to a bike shop and they can assemble it for you, usually for a small fee, ranging anywhere between, you know, $100 to $250. And if you decide to assemble it yourself, the assembly process on this bike was pretty straightforward and pretty simple. If it were me, I'd save your money, watch the assembly video, kind of follow along step by step, and you should be able to get this thing together and running without an issue. Now, the last question most people have when they come to Power On e-bikes is, what's the warranty? What's the after-sale service like? Now, on this one, the warranty is 1 year. Covers most of the stuff. You can check out their warranty information, you know, compare that with some of the other people's warranties. And for after-sale service, you can call them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and you can email them like most other companies. And guys, that is going to do it for our Perfect Ride series on the Roadster V3. If you guys have any questions for me, let me know down in the comments. I love talking to you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.